Preston Guy from Tiger Bait joins us on the Jim's Firearms Hotline. Preston, how we doing?
Hunt, as long as the game goes till 1 a.m. tonight, I think the good guys are going to be good to go.
I don't think LSU is going to be playing at 1 a.m., but I do think Rhode Island and Dallas Baptist are going to be playing near 1 a.m. That's the way this radar is looking, and that is why Jay Johnson decided to play the early game because he doesn't want to do that. So, but I agree. Tigers are pretty good late at night, and guess what? Sunday's first pitch is scheduled for 8 o'clock. We hope LSU is in that game, and that one could be pretty late, so we'll see how this thing shakes out. I want to talk a little bit about this point in the calendar, Preston. It's time to, one, get the players into summer workouts, but two, the staff very much involved in recruiting and trying to take the next 2 months to get your class as locked up as you can before their season starts and you get signatures in December. How do you feel like this class right now looks on paper?
Well, the class is very star-studded right now, but it needs to fill up with some volume. They need to get their pieces, and there's a couple, what ifs right now, like Blaine Bradford, the number one safety in the country out of Catholic High, is currently committed to Ohio State, which, it doesn't matter what. That's not going to sit well with fans at any point. So they're going to have to do some work to work on things like that. But official visits are starting this weekend, actually. In fact, guys like Deuce Gerald's going to be on campus. We're talking about top 100 guy out of Georgia is here, and there's a few other guys to keep an eye on for sure. Zayden Crimplin and whatnot. So definitely now is the time where recruiting is going to pick up heavy for this staff.
Do you expect some flurry is probably a heavy word, multiple commitments in the next 2 or 3 weeks to this class of 2026?
Yeah, I think the way you phrased it, multiple, but not a flurry. We're not gonna. I don't think we see like a dozen people here in the next 2 weeks. You know what I mean? That'd be just wild. But I mean, we're talking about the class is going to be 90% put together by the end of summer. Okay, we're going to look up July 31st, and we're probably going to see, probably 20, if not more, people committed, and they're sitting at 9 right now. So I definitely think that we're due for a big boom in recruiting here shortly.
Let's talk about some of the guys in this class. Tristan Keys is the number one wide receiver in the country.
Yeah.
Depending on where you look, he's a 5-star across the board, top 5 player in the country by the composite. Out of Hattiesburg, how do you feel about the strength of that commitment as we sit here today?
I mean, he is still taking official visits. That's one thing to keep in mind. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to Miami this weekend. Okay. And of course, Miami's someone who's scary because they've been known to throw big money at players. A lot of times at players they might not think deserve it. Look at Carson Beck, look at the receiver who LSU brought in last year. Was it CJ Daniels, whatever? It's just scary to deal with Miami in the portal because they're a little sporadic with the guys they bring in and the money they throw sometimes. That being said, what makes me more nervous than the official visit, because frankly, if you're a 17-year-old kid with an opportunity to travel the country and look at all the elite programs, you're pretty dumb not to take those free opportunities. What scares me more than that is straight up the fact that he's from Mississippi. Mississippi and LSU recruiting has just been weird. I really don't have any other way how to put it other than weird for the last seemingly 25 years with, the kids they get and the kids they don't get. And especially on signing day, it's been weird vibes out of Mississippi. So that is what would make me nervous with Tristan Keys. That being said, when we're talking about a top 5 player nationally, number one receiver in the country, you need to do everything you can do to get him to be on campus.
Yeah, no doubt. And you're about to have a lot of guys moving on from this team that will be out of eligibility or moving on to the NFL after this year. So potentially some significant playing time to be had in his first year on campus. Looking at the in-state guys like Louisiana, you mentioned Blaine Bradford that's committed to Ohio State. How do you feel about Lamar Brown, big-time offense, defensive lineman, however you want to term it, from U-High down the street?
Yeah, Lamar is a kid who has been on LSU's radar for a very, very long time. Of course, he's at U-High. And he's a kid, every time I talk to him, especially this talk has ramped up a lot watching Travis Hunter win the Heisman playing both sides of the ball. He wants to play offensive line and defensive line in college. Now, I do know this relationship with LSU's had its ups, had its downs, but the most recently I've heard from him is LSU's still on top despite it all, you know. So I think LSU stands in a good spot. Obviously, that's a kid you need to bring in, particularly if he's right. And he is a two-way player. Talking about if you could get an elite offensive and defensive lineman, I mean, my goodness, that's unheard of. So, I mean, essentially, two positions in the trenches would be filled by one guy. Now, whether or not he's actually good enough to do it or has the endurance to pull that off, we'll see. Particularly defensive line tends to be a position that even if you're a starter, you're not on the field every down, you know. So we'll see how that turns out. But I think LSU's in a good shape, but you got to be nervous with a kid like him simply because he's so highly touted. He's been on so many people's boards for so long. Every defensive line and coach in the country and offensive line coach in the country, you know, wants a piece of that, you know, and money's going to become flowing. So, you know, there's a reason why, despite being literally on LSU's campus every day, and LSU's had an offer into him for probably 3 years now, that he hasn't pulled the trigger on that yet. He's certainly waiting.
We've seen like not Ross Dellinger, Wilson Alexander wrote a great piece at The Advocate talking about LSU's roster building strategy with Austin Thomas and Brian Kelly and visiting the Seahawks and putting together the salary cap and understanding what you have to do with high school, what you got to do with college, and then how you allocate funds to each position. But as you look at the way LSU has approached roster building on the whole, how do you feel about it?
Pretty good. I mean, I like the roster that they've built this year. And I like that they're not willing to overpay for a kid. I think what Jakeem Stewart got out of USC a year ago and the concerns that I was hearing, I think that was a good way to handle that. I don't think you need to empty out your reserve for a guy. I mean, I think he's played either less than 15 high school football games, and he's signing for, you know, $2 million or more to go to USC. It's a little concerning. You know, I like that they're here's let me put it like this. A year ago, you whiffed on all these players asking for big money, and we heard that same excuse. But at the end of the day, you didn't have a roster that was talented enough to compete. Okay, this year I think they have a roster that's talented enough to compete for national, nationally on that big scale. But you're still hearing a little bit of that. You know, Bryce Underwood, we are not going to overpay for him. Oh, Jakeem Stewart, we're not going to overpay for him. But then look at the guys you are getting. Look at who you did bring in. I mean, there's tons of talent that they were able to bring in both in the portal and the recruiting class. So it's not like, you know, they're just bringing in nobody. So generally, yes, I like what they're doing with the money that they have. And I think their money this year is just under triple the money that they had last year to work with. So I think from everybody I've heard, Austin Thomas is one of the best in the business in terms of both generating money and using it well. So as far as my information goes, which I don't have everything here, but as far as I'm aware, I think they are doing a good job.
It's the name of the game. You got to get the guys in, and then you can coach them, try to win some football games. LSU appears to have done a pretty good job with that. We'll see as of Labor Day weekend in 2025. Preston, we appreciate some time. We'll talk again next week. Thanks, man.